Is it Kirk Cousins' fault that we lost to the Dallas Cowboys this past Sunday? No, not entirely. It's not really his fault. He played a good game. Is it his fault that we didn't put ourselves in a position at the end to win the game? Yes, 100%. And he did it once again. There's a game that we play sometimes in sports as fans where we do this hypothetical, who would you take in a situation where the game is on the line and you need to win, you need to score, you need to drive down the field, 1 minute left, 90 seconds left. Who would you take in that situation? We usually pit two very good players against each other. Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. Is there ever going to be an instance where we put Kirk Cousins in that discussion? No. Is there ever going to be an instance where he is put in that situation and we pick him over somebody else? No. Give me Ryan Fitzpatrick in a game-winning situation on the line against the Dallas Cowboys with 4 minutes left and all you need is a couple first downs to ice the victory. Give me Jared Goff with 1:30 left, one timeout, and all you need to do is get into field goal range to tie the Dallas Cowboys at 2-7, the worst team in the NFC East. We need to break from this unknown reason that we feel like we need to be attached to this guy, because we don't. Every single time that the spotlight gets put on him and he is asked to play up to his ridiculous contract that I have here on the board, keep this in mind as we discuss this. I'm not going to read you these numbers. You can see them. You're aware of what we pay this guy. And it's absurd. He is incapable of having the moment other than the 2019 playoff game against the Saints in overtime. That was the exception. That is not the rule. That is peak Kirk Cousins in that moment. We have seen more of the floor than we deserve to. The floor for Kirk Cousins is very, very, very low. It is within the depths of the basement, and that's a problem. And I saw a take yesterday on Twitter that absolutely blew my mind because it was just so hot, such a hot take that I could turn off my furnace and heat my house with it in the middle of the winter in Midwest. And it's absurd. And the take said that we're going to look back on this in a couple of years and wonder how we wasted Kirk Cousins' prime in 2020. When that is ridiculous. There is an argument to be made that Kirk Cousins came to this football team and wasted this really good defense that we had in 2018 and 2019, because he's just not it. Whenever there's a situation that is asked of him to backpack this team to a win, because let's face it, it's the NFL, modern era, 2020, you can't rely on your defense every single time. There's going to be situations where you got to march down the field and you got to win a football game. It happens to everybody. Everybody has those opportunities. Just look at Matthew Stafford, how often he's done it. And I would never take Kirk Cousins in a situation where I need some way to get into field goal range or, God forbid, a touchdown in order to win the game in the final minutes. And it's just another example of how he is just not it, right? Because if you take what's the first half of the season before the bye week and the second, how things have changed. The first half, they were really relying on Kirk Cousins to be the guy. Yes, they got down a lot early, so that sort of wiped out what Dalvin Cook could have been early on in the season. But in that situation where you still have plenty of time left, you got to catch up, it's not going to happen. And that sort of end to the Cowboys season, or end to the Cowboys game, sort of brought me back to the beginning of the season against the Indianapolis Colts, and I'll go over that in a minute. Then you take a look at the second half of the season, after the Falcons game, after the bye week, where they decided we're going to run the Dalvin Cook train, we're going to play defense, we're going to ask Kirk to do a few little things here and there, and all will be well. And then they rattle off 3 wins, and everybody buys into the formula. Everybody's like, oh, Kirk Cousins is playing fine, he's playing good, he did well against Detroit, he did well against Chicago. Yeah, so what? But then we get into a situation where, we go up against a 2-7 Cowboys team with an absolutely terrible defense, and he plays a very good game, 300-plus yards passing, touchdowns, no interceptions, but when it matters most, he can't do it. And we coddle him with a play-action pass. He survives way too much on that, and when the backfield is empty and things are spread out, this offense is suddenly anemic. And that is Kirk Cousins in a nutshell and how he operates. And if you just look back at the history of Kirk Cousins, and we'll go over that, and keep in mind the numbers on this board, as because you know what we pay for. And his career as a starting quarterback isn't very long, but he's been doing it for a while, where he's amassed quite a number of wins and losses. So Since he's been here, 22, 18, and 1 since signing that initial contract in 2018 with the Minnesota Vikings. 3 years in Minnesota, 22 wins, 18 losses, 1 tie. 2018, we were 8, 7, and 1. And I'll revisit that season here in a minute. 2019, we were 10 and 6, and we had the playoff win against the Saints that took us to overtime. Very great throw to Adam Thielen. Very good throw to Kyle Rudolph to win it in the end zone. I will give credit where credit is due. That was peak Kirk Cousins, and it's never going to get any better than that game. And then 2020, of course, this year we are 4 and 6, and he had a disastrous first half before the bye week. His 6-year total in Washington was 26, 30, and 1 as a starter. I'm not going to include the games where he wasn't a full-time starter for the early seasons. Grand total career record 48, 48, and 2 as of right now. Wow, did we pay a lot of money for 500 football? So back in 2018, that was the point very early on where I knew that Kirk Cousins was never going to win us much of anything other than maybe a 10-win season, a couple playoff wins, but no Super Bowl, which is the goal. At the end of the 2018 season, I didn't really have my mind made up until the Bears game, where we needed a win in our home stadium to get into the playoffs, and he couldn't manufacture it at all. I want to go over that game with you. Let's revisit the offense against the Chicago Bears at the end of the 2018 season. We had 10 drives where Kirk Cousins had a chance to make a name for himself. Big game. Spotlight's on him. First drive, 3 plays, 3 yards, punt. Second drive, 4 plays, 1 yard, punt. Third drive, 3 plays, 7 yards, punt. 3 plays, -9 yards, punt. 6 plays, 15 yards, punt. 8 plays, 37 yards, field goal. Took 6 drives to figure it out. Seventh drive, 11 plays, 92 yards, touchdown. Came at 9:26 in the third quarter. By that time, it's too late. 4 plays, 7 yards, turnover on downs. 5 plays, 12 yards, turnover on downs. 6 plays, 40 yards, turnover on downs. Culminating in what we all saw in the argument on the sideline with Adam Thielen on route running. You know, the whole... Everybody remembers that. Then he goes to the press conference and says, oh, this is year 1. We got to come up with all our little code words and, work on things. You get paid that much money to have a figure it out year? Like, give me a break. That was when I knew that this guy was never going to amount to anything. That is when I disassociated myself from having an allegiance to this guy at this position. And I think more people need to start doing that. More people need to come around and realize that he's not going to take us to the promised land. That game we lost 24-10. He finished 20 and 33 for 132 yards and a touchdown, 57 total offensive plays. That is the lowest of that season. And it gets, the same thing happened again, and we've seen it this year. Just take a look at week 2 against the Colts. We had 10 drives, and they went like this. 13 plays, 75 yards, field goal. Everything looks good so far. Then it breaks down for the rest of the game. 3 plays, 5 yards, punt. 3-2, punt. 3-2, safety. 3-0 interception. 4-22 interception. 2-0 interception. 6-13 punt. 3-3 punt, and then 8-75 touchdown when it's meaningless. It's like Blake Bortles in Jacksonville in 2015. Week 6 against the Falcons. Yes, of course, I'm going over this one. 12 drives, 1-0 interception, 3-9 punt, 3-1 punt, 8-74 turnover on downs, 4-17 interception. These are plays and yards, by the way, if you haven't figured that out. 4 plays, 31 yards, interception, 1 play, 3 yards, halftime, 9-75 touchdown, 3-1 punt, 3-4 punt, 8-75 touchdown, 3-80 touchdown when it's meaningless. And that just sort of brought me back to the end of the Dallas game where you have 4 minutes to ice it, get the victory, kick Dallas out of here at 2-8, but we're not able to do that because Kirk Cousins can't. Very rarely is he able to pull that off, and I think the Saints game last year in the playoffs was peak Kirk Cousins. Also, just wanted to revisit what happened after that Saints game. Remember, 2019, we went to San Francisco and we got absolutely punched in the mouth because the entire offense just looks like it never played a down of football in its life. I didn't write down the stats for that one, but it's hard to revisit because it's so burned in my memory on how terrible it was. So that is basically what we're getting right here, is 500 football, 8-8, bell curve of mediocrity. You can praise Kirk Cousins when he does well, when he has good games. You can say, hey, this worked out. But better things are possible, mind you. And we have to start realizing that. We have to get out of this current realm that we're in, that we have to accept this because nothing is better. It's going to take a while to find something that's better. We may not land a Josh Allen. We may not find a Kyler Murray. We may not get an Aaron Rodgers. But one of them is out there, and we should be able to get one. If you don't take the opportunity in the NFL draft to get a quarterback who could be better than what you currently have, then you're not actually interested in winning a Super Bowl, because that's the goal. Kirk Cousins is very good for getting you 9 wins, 10 wins, 8 wins, maybe a playoff win. But when he goes up against really strong competition and the spotlight is put on him, he can't do it. He can't compete. There's a reason he is 1-9 on Monday Night Football. We all celebrated that one win against the Chicago Bears, right? That Chicago Bears offense is trash. That's not his fault, and he has nothing to do with that side of the ball on defense. But the fact that that offense is so anemic is what allowed us to get that victory in Chicago. It's still a hard-fought battle because of how good the Bears defense is, but at the same time, there's a little asterisk next to that, in my opinion. So, what do we know? I think Kirk Cousins has been in the league long enough. I think it's been 9 years now. He's 32 years old. We know what he is. To expect him to get better than this is just a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. Maybe in a few years, he'll go to another team and people will see that he's just the same. He could very well go to the 49ers next year or the year after and do just as well as he does here, but no better. I don't really see why that would be an area where he would excel. I mean, if you put him on the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, I think, yeah, maybe then in that situation he would do better because that offense is loaded. But I don't see it, and I don't think people need to be so aggressive to defend him, especially when your first take after losing to the Dallas Cowboys is, well, we can't blame it on Kirk Cousins because he had a good game. You're just humping the stat box at this point. You have to give everybody their due, and you have to give everybody their criticism. He is not unworthy of criticism just because the loss wasn't his fault. He is absolutely worthy of criticism because he plays the most important position in arguably all of sports. So I understand Vikings fans don't want to get burned in the draft. I get it. We got a bad one with Christian Ponder. There are bad quarterbacks that get drafted in the first round every single year. It takes a few years for them to figure it out. But it's frequent. It's one of the biggest crapshoots in the history of everything. Just ask the Cleveland Browns how many times they did it. But you know what they did? They kept doing it until they got one. And Baker Mayfield may not be the answer, but right now they're winning football games. They're 7-3 in a division that's really, really hard, in a conference that is very top heavy. And they might be thinking playoffs this year. What are we looking at? 4-6, and we hope we can finish 8-8. That to me is not $61 million guaranteed football. That is just absurd. If this was a $12 million contract, $20 million contract, $25 million contract, I would be less inclined to argue against defending him. So that is it. That is my take, if you will. That's my reaction to other people's reactions to defending Kirk Cousins after losing to the 2-7 Cowboys, where he could not drive the football in the final minutes to ice the game or get into field goal range with one timeout and 90 seconds left, and all they needed was a field goal to tie. So let me know what you think, and that'll do it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.